and Claire Broughton. And Claire, good to have you here.
Great to be here, Justin. I wish I was in the space with you this morning.
Good. I know. We'll get you in here. I mean, we'll just put you over here in a booth, so we just do it at the same spot next time. But that's so now for you all, a little bit more context. Ann Claire is the founder of Carolina Employee Ownership Center, also the principal at Broughton Consulting, has a business community here in Durham for over 20 years. Incredible human doing incredible work, path that you've been on. And I'd love for us to start there. How did you end up this world of employee ownership and digging into these models? Give us that backstory.
Sure. So it actually goes all the way back to college. I was fortunate enough to go to Oberlin College, where the students ran half of the housing and dining for the other students through cooperatives. And so I got interested in this idea that you can put your resources together and create something cooperatively. And after I graduated, I worked for the National Association of Student Cooperatives and helped close the books on their student cooperatives for the year. And we did some tours of cooperatives of all sorts in all different businesses. So got exposed to the idea that any kind of business could be run differently, could be run by the people who work there. And I was definitely intrigued by that idea. Then it was a long time later before I was actually in the cooperative movement. Is it okay if I keep talking?
Yeah, keep going. I know we got a little bit of lag, so yeah, keep going.
Okay, so I wanted to do work that helped the world. I got into the recycling industry. That's what was kind of happening in the early 90s. We were setting up municipal recycling around the country. And then I met David Kirkpatrick from Durham, and we started an impact investing fund called SJF Ventures. And I was the co-founder and senior director of the Institute, which was the affiliated nonprofit. And we were able to help lots of businesses that the fund couldn't invest in. And I got really interested in engagement, employee engagement, organizational culture. And when you walk into some businesses and you feel like your soul is being sucked out of your body, and that is a bad culture. And other businesses you walk in, people are excited, people are engaged, it feels like Provident, people are really helping each other and, you know, on a path to do things together. So that's when I started studying employee engagement and what is it that makes a good culture versus a toxic culture. And there's so many things that go into employee engagement. But really the pinnacle of employee engagement is when you have some form of open book management. People know what we're trying to do together. We're working towards it as a team. And then employee ownership, where we all share in the rewards together. So I formed Broughton Consulting back in 2014 just to focus on business succession, especially for small businesses. It's kind of a key moment in time with a lot of retiring baby boomer business owners. And if they don't have someone to take over their business or a child who wants to run it, a lot of key businesses are in danger of failing. So I've helped so far 3 businesses transition to worker ownership through worker cooperatives and employee ownership. So that's number 1. Number 2 is I'm a certified open book management coach with the Great Game of Business, because if you're going to turn your business over to the employees, they got to understand how to run businesses. And then number 3, I am very interested in case studies, curricula around participatory management, all the different ways that you can get people engaged. And then just workforce, you know, how do you create good frontline jobs for people? What are the things? Good pay, livable wage, good benefits, training, flexible work schedule, predictable work schedule, and then, of course, opportunities to advance and ownership. So I'm doing a lot of work around good frontline jobs. So the soul of everything I do is wealth building for frontline workers.
Yes. Could you demystify employee ownership for us? I think especially American context, which is hyper individual, right? That these moderate to enough people, could you demystify this a little bit and break it down? So it's not easy, lofty concept. Bring it down to earth for us. What does this look like on the ground?
Sure. So there's lots of ways you can do employee ownership. Probably the most familiar one is a worker cooperative. I think a lot of people have heard of a worker co-op. And so in a worker co-op, everybody, it's one member, one share, one vote. So everybody buys their one share of the business, and it can be deducted through their paycheck because, it might be a chunk of cash. But then they're an owner, and so they have an equal voice with everybody else. In North Carolina, we're usually doing LLCs to form new cooperatives. In some states, that can be your legal structure is a worker co-op. But they tend to run democratically. You may still have managers, but anything big, you're going to want to run by consensus, decide things by consensus. And North Carolina has some incredible pockets of worker ownership. So especially in the western part of the state, we've got Opportunity Threads, which is an immigrant-led cut and sew factory. Then there's also Poder Emma, which is a Latinx community of a number of different cooperatives. There's housing cooperatives, and there's some real estate cooperatives and bookkeeping cooperatives. So they've found all kinds of ways to put their resources together and run co-ops. I think people do associate, frou-frou natural foods co-ops with the word cooperative, but it's way more than that. And in fact, the Durham Food Co-op is really trying to be in the community and not be just for, high wealth people. So that's one form of employee ownership, is a worker co-op. Another one that people may not be as familiar with is the Employee Stock Ownership Plan, or ESOP. Have you heard of an ESOP?
Yes, but break it down for us. Break it down. This is really helpful.
Okay, so Employee Stock Ownership Plan, or ESOP, is regulated by federal retirement law. And so in the case of an ESOP, you form a trust and sell at least 30% of the company's shares to the ESOP. So it's better for a bigger company that has some resources. But if you sell at least 30% of the shares to the ESOP, then the selling shareholder can defer capital gains tax indefinitely. So it's very nice from that perspective. If you sell 100% of the shares to the ESOP, then that company converts to an S Corp, that company is tax exempt. And once the selling shareholder and any loans are paid off, then profits go into people's retirement accounts. And when they retire or leave the company has a few years to 100% pay them out. But people retire with very nice nest eggs. And normally they'll have some sort of 401k as well. So it's really enabling people to build that wealth, and as well as being engaged in building the business, helping it be successful, helping it be profitable, because then everybody benefits. So ESOPs are fantastic.
Question on that really quickly. So what about for in the era of employees not necessarily staying at companies? Obviously, that could drive retention, which I think is really helpful. But how does the for people that may only be there for a few years, do they just keep that?
Yeah, I mean, you could have a small ESOP account that's paid off when you leave. You may not be fully vested if you don't stay long enough. Usually there's some incentive to stay through vesting. So it might take 5 years to vest, and then over time you really build some assets in that account. And then when you leave, there's something there. So yeah, communicating, that is a challenge. You've hit the nail on the head, is communicating with younger workers that there is an advantage in staying longer.
Okay, continue. You were going deeper into that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so ESOPs are fantastic, and some of them are run a little more democratically and some are not, but they all have the opportunity to keep jobs in communities and help people build wealth. And we are seeing some ESOPs that really, want to give employees voice and are really intentionally building in some employee voice. Then there are newer forms of employee ownership, such as the Employee Ownership Trust, or EOT. So that is the predominant form of employee ownership in the UK, but it's been pretty rare here in the US until the last 5-10 years. Now we've got at least 14 EOTs in the US, and the 14th is here in North Carolina. So ShopBot
Come on, North
Tools,
Carolina.
yeah, here, and we've got our first EOT, and I worked on that transaction, and it's good for a company that's a little bit smaller, but that doesn't want to become a co-op. So it's kind of that intermediate option, although companies of any size in EOT. And so there's a couple things that are great about it. One is that you could potentially set it up as a perpetual trust so that it can never be sold away from the employees. And that's what motivated some of the trusts in the US. In the case of ShopBot, I think we put in the deal that if the deal is good enough and if it makes sense, it could be sold eventually, but employees have to make a certain amount of money. So in the case of the trust, trust law changed in 2004 so that instead of an individual like Justin as a beneficiary of this trust, an idea, the employees are the beneficiary. So the company is held by this trust. It's run by a board of directors, and there's a trust protector that makes sure that the terms of the trust are carried out properly. But every year, if there's profits, they are distributed to the employees in the form of profit sharing. But there's no long-term savings account. So as long as you work there, you participate in profit sharing, and when you leave, you're done. So that could be good for younger employees. We get in, they get out. While you're there, you participate. When you leave, you're done.
Right. Just a few shout outs to some of the people hopping in on the live. Tyra Wade, our new in 1898 in the chat. Good to see you, Tyra. We have Dr. K. Congratulations to and Claire. Thank you so much, Dr. K. And a question from John as well. Would it be possible advantageous for a very small business to use an ESOP mechanism? Makes sense. Thanks for the information and insights. And just so you all know, hop in to do this here on LinkedIn Live. Like we could be having a side conversation somewhere and just putting it out live so that it's participatory with you all. It's LinkedIn ownership, if you will, part of the chat here. So yeah, to John's question, that ESOP for a smaller business.
Yeah, so the general rule of thumb is you need to have at least 20 employees and pretty sizable profits to be able to afford an ESOP. Some people say up to $1 million in EBITDA. So that's a bigger company. Because it's regulated by federal retirement law or ERISA, there are a lot of things you have to do to start up and maintain your ESOP. So it's a great option for a bigger company that's got maybe, 10 million or more in sales. It's a really good option. And we've seen some wonderful ESOPs out there like King Arthur Flour. What else would people know? Wawa actually is an ESOP. It's got a big ESOP. Publix has an ESOP. So it's good for bigger companies. But the couple I've worked on have been worker co-ops and ownership trusts. So that's what I was just talking about, is an employee owner trust or an EOT. And I think we'll see more transitions through EOTs because they are less expensive than an ESOP. There's less regulatory requirements, and you can set it up a little more the way you want to. So I think we're going to see more EOTs and more worker co-ops. And the other thing I help people with is just a management buyout. There was a couple of businesses that were just going to close down, and so I talked to them about the possibility of helping to fund their key managers to buy the business, because it's just, we don't want an economy that is all Amazon and Walmart and Google. They're great, but let's have our local.
Biodiversity.
Yes, we want those locally owned, locally controlled businesses that are so important to our community.
Yeah. So we now transition into this. We now have all of these baby boomers retiring, and some of whom do not have to take the business. Talk about what you're able to do for those types of companies in transition and that need some sort of exit plan, because I know you're doing a lot of work in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one reason why I worked with partners, including Latasha Best Gaddy, who's part of the community,
Mm-hmm.
and others, to start the North
Yeah.
Carolina Employee Ownership Center. And it's part of a network of state employee ownership centers around the country that are starting up right now at this key moment with baby boomers retiring.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the silver tsunami. It's the largest wealth transfer in history. And so we really want that wealth to go to the workers as much as possible. So we started up the Employee Ownership Center just to get the word out in North Carolina that selling to your employees through an ESOP or a worker co-op or an EOT could be a good method. So I guess what I tell small businesses is just start thinking about succession early. It's exciting when you're doing a startup and you're getting going, but and you don't want to think about what's going to happen later. But I encourage people to just make a plan. Think about where you want to be in 5-10 years, where you want the business to be in 5-10 years, and then just start thinking about the options. You could sell to if there is a strategic buyer, you could sell to them. Maybe there's a partner that you've been working with that you could sell to, or it might make sense to sell to your employees. But just start thinking about it, making a plan, getting everything in order, make sure your financials are in order, and make sure your employees have a plan. Where do they want to go? Are they interested in buying the business? Sometimes they're not.
I'd love to hear more about that, because I know a lot of our listeners that tune in or idea stage businesses. What are the things you should be thinking about as you're forming? You just have a single member LLC for right now, but you're interested in some of these models to take on more employees, but you want it to be done in a more cooperative fashion, or you're that. How do you start from this stage planning for that? Like you're thinking way down the road, but what are kind of the questions that would lead you in the right?
Yeah, so like we said, think about where you want to go in the next 5-10 years, and what do you want your business to look like. And there's a really nice visioning exercise that Ari Weinswag at Zingerman's out of Ann Arbor has really encouraged people to do, and I've used it with a lot of different businesses. It's just put yourself 5 years in the future and write just a little plan. Like it's now, August 16th, it's 2027. I'm sitting with Justin at Provident, and here's what I'm super proud of having done over the last 5 years. And put yourself in that future. So that's one thing to do. And then more concretely, think about how many employees you want, what would be optimal, because when you do add employees, you're adding a layer of administration and management.
Sure.
And every time you bring people in a room, you've got drama like we do. So I'd love to teach people about how to have good, solid, crucial conversations with each other, so we can work together. And I encourage people to think about kind of culture you want. I love an engaged, participatory culture where everything is open and straightforward, and people talking to each other. People are clear about where we're going, what are our metrics. So just think about the culture that you want, and think about your big goal. What are you trying to achieve through your business? My heart is around building wealth for frontline workers and folks that have been left out of the economy forever in this country. And so that's inspiring. Young people want to work with businesses that have a bigger mission and a bigger purpose. So I guess just
Yeah.
a little reflection. Ask yourself all these questions. Why am I here? What's my purpose? How many people do I want working with me? How can I create a culture that's effective? And then what kind of exit would I want? Would I want to work or co-op?
Yeah. Effective work cultures, because I think that's something that you do a lot of work around and dig into your lens and your lane, but I think it's compelling. What are the things that contribute to engaged, cooperative, constructive, that build towards a larger mission? What are some of the common threads that you're seeing? Employee ownership plays a part of that, or can help fuel that, but overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just leading a workshop for small business yesterday on attracting, hiring, retaining, onboarding, mentoring talent,
Yep.
because that's a big deal right now. People are,
Yep.
are
In
not
the
going to
great
stand
resignation.
for, that's right. And people are not going to stand for a toxic work culture. They're going to try something else. So clarity is number one. And very small businesses don't have a lot of systems. So I encourage even very small businesses, just write a simple job description with a simple checklist. This is what this person's duties are. So it's super clear. And then these are the benchmarks. These are the skills you need to master by, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and just have clarity. And then feedback. You want good feedback loops. So you never want, I actually worked for a place where we didn't do performance reviews for 7 years. And I heard someone say, 7 years ago, you did this thing. It wasn't so great. Like, whoa, I can't control 7 years ago. So you want to give feedback right away.
Wow.
This is working well. This is not working well. So yeah, and then you want to ask employees, how is it working here? How can we make it better? What are your ideas? So just some simple systems to get people on the same page. I would really recommend, even for the smallest businesses. But I
Yeah,
will talk about open book management if you're ready.
man. Because this is something. Give it like from the beginning, the basics of this, because it's a big term. What is open book management, and how is it driving engagement performance in companies as well?
Yes. So open book management is an operating system where we really try to have that clear communication from the bottom up, and create the voice for people at every level. So everybody's engaged, everybody's aligned. We know what we're trying to aim for, and we're constantly improving. And when we get there, everybody is rewarded. So that's sort of the big picture. And then, to operationalize that, we do make the analogy of a sports game. Business is basically a game, right? Uh, we've got our goals, our objectives, we've got our rules, we've got our score, and it's fun. Why not have fun in business?
Yes.
Right? So we teach everybody some basic financial literacy, which is great for work, and it's also great for your personal life. Just to demystify the numbers. A lot of us maybe had bad experience in math class and feel like we're not strong with numbers. But there's no reason why everyone can't understand a basic financial statement, because that's the core of the business. So we teach people the profit and loss statement. So how much are we bringing in revenue? How much does it cost to do business? And what are our other expenses? And then what's the bottom line? Are we, profitable, or are we having a loss? And then we teach people the importance of cash. And it's just like your checkbook. You bring in money, you have to pay your rent, you got to pay your car payment, you got to buy whatever those expenses are. And then hopefully you have something left over so you can save or do something fun. So we make that analogy, and people that are part of Great Game of Business Open Book Management, really get good at saving and accomplishing their own goals and paying off their debt. So it's very exciting to see that. But we set everything up around the scoreboard, which is a condensed profit and loss statement, and we want line of sight. So we teach people it really does matter if you take longer to fold people's laundry or to, cook the hamburger or whatever the business is. And if we don't do it right and the customers are happy, like there's a real implication. So it really matters what you do. It actually really, really matters. And especially if it's an employee-owned business, like this is our business, we benefit. So let's do it the very best that we can, really make that customer happy. And then you'll see on the scoreboard, which is the numbers, that we did better. And that money goes in our pockets. Oh, thank you, Dr. K, for putting that in.
Yes.
Yes. I will put the Zimmerman's visioning in the chat a little bit later. So yeah, we set everything up around that big profit and loss statement. And then we have weekly huddles. And just like in football, we're going to check the score, talk about game conditions, plan the next play, get fired up and go out there and play our hardest. It's just like that. We have weekly huddles where we look at the numbers, we tell the stories behind the numbers, because numbers are just stories about what we did every day, just stories about customers we helped, things that we did. And it's so exciting.
Love that.
Yeah, when people connect the dots, it's just so exciting. And the other thing we do is we forecast forward. So right now my teams are forecasting the second week of August. We're always forecasting how the month is going to end. And there's 4 weeks in a month. So at the beginning, you have a little less idea. But as the month goes on, you have a pretty good idea of how the month's going to end. And if something big's happening, if some big revenue is not going to hit this month, or there's some bigger than usual expense, maybe we can adjust something else. So it enables us to strategize in real time about how to run the business. And it's all of us together thinking, strategizing, cheering each other on. We do commits every week. What do I commit to do that's going to move the needle? And then shout outs. Justin did this awesome thing, and I'm so proud. I want to tell the whole company. And that's what builds that great culture, when we really recognize we all work together to do awesome things. So that's sort of the way the huddle goes. And then we work with individual departments. So what is it that moves the needle for each different department? And get people to, again, how can I do my piece of job really, really well? So that feeds up into the big huddle where we're looking at the numbers together. And then we play mini games. So if there's something that is bugging you, that, a habit that you want to build. So there was a company that did carpet cleaning, and they just didn't realize that if they would add a Scotchgard treatment, it made the customers really happy, and it was a big margin. Like they made a lot of money from that, but they just weren't in the habit of offering it. So they played a mini game. It was actually had a Scotch theme. So it was a giant Scotch glass, and you put an ice cube in for every Scotchgard treatment that you sold as a team, right? And so they just had to get in it. It made the customers happy. They made more money. They all benefited. And so they played a game, and so we love scoreboards where you put on the wall what you're trying to achieve, and then you're strategizing together, getting excited together, cheering together, and then you win. You will reward yourself through some kind of prize together as a team. We always win as a team. We don't stress individual achievements. We all want to be trying our best to win as a team.
Right, the team, and that contributes deeply to the impact. But it's really about wanted some clarity around is the idea of line of sight. Now, for owners in my world that I know, there's this hesitancy around too much transparency. Looks like, so when you're talking about line of sight, you said a simple version of that. What does that look to give enough line of sight? How transparent in this, again, especially here in America, is it can be a little bit of a scary concept. So what does that mean?
So we never share salaries except in aggregate. So that gives people some peace of mind. And, you know, if the owner has an owner's draw, and which they're perfectly entitled to, you know, we may not make that super public. But in general, we're very open. And if it's an employee-owned business, it can be totally transparent. I did have one business owner. He sold his business. He started his business in college. It was his baby, and he finally, he didn't have children to take over. Meryl, who's on the line, hi Meryl, was with us at dinner,
Oh, what's up?
and
Yeah.
it was Brian Hall with Graphic Visual Solutions. So he did sell to his employees during, and he was very pleased about it, and it was really a habit of just holding the numbers really close to the chest. But finally, you know, we got him to put some simpers up on the board. Again, it doesn't have to be every single number, but people got to know what's our revenue, what are the different buckets of revenue. Cost of goods sold is important, like labor, materials, and then key expenses, but we can put them in buckets. And then we got to know the bottom line. We know if we're winning or losing.
Right. And I like the idea of referring to it as a scoreboard, because it is one business, right? One key outcome of business. You know, profit, I don't believe, is the purpose of business. I believe good business, you know, the purpose of business should be, I think, much bigger than making money.
Yes.
And very few employees know anything about where we're at all. I love this idea of making that a scoreboard and bringing people into. We want to make sure we shout out some people in the chat again. Meryl, good to see you here, saying happy to see this. Employee ownership is connected to rural NC community resilience work, which Meryl, everybody should follow Meryl as well. And then Kevin Robinson hopping in. Dr. K, thanks so much. Peace in the chat. Kevin Robinson, are you successful in getting capital to employee groups? So how do the employees actually make these purchases? You know, for some of whom are paycheck at the time, what is that? I think that's where that question is going. You might have a better angle on that. So
yes, I will answer your question 1 minute, Kevin, but let's just finish up where we were. So I am 100% with you that business is for doing good in the world. And my business is a certified B Corporation, which if people are familiar with B Corporation, it is an international certifying body that, you know, certifies that you are actually, you're actually accountable to all your shareholders. So the environment, your people, the community, as well as financially. But we say that there is no mission without margin. So we do have to make money so we can do good.
Love that.
Yes. So what I like to do is start the huddle with the big picture, like the purpose of why we're here. We are here to do whatever it is good in the world. Here's the numbers. And then below the bottom line, are we profitable or not? We may have metrics around the good work that we're doing. Like if we are, you know, Big Brothers, Big Sisters in Missouri has played great game of business. So they're all about matching bigs with littles. So that's going to be on their scoreboard. So whatever it is that you're doing is going to be on your scoreboard as well as the numbers. So yeah, that's a great clarification. I'm glad that you added. So
but you said, which I think is key, main score first, right? Like you're saying that, hey, you know, all these other very vital pieces don't happen. Mission doesn't happen without margin. I love that. So I know we actually have to know that this is happening so that the work is sustainable, and those, but they certainly, you know, on the scoreboard for longevity.
Yeah, we've got to keep our eyes on both. Absolutely, where we're going with our mission, and we've got to be able to fund it. Profit is not a dirty word. You know, we've got to make money to fund our good work. All right, there's a thriving discussion in the chat about funding employee ownership.
Love it.
So couple things that are going on. There's a really great new fund called APIS and Heritage. It's a Black-led fund investing in Black-led businesses and those with, I think, over 50% BIPOC employees. And they are 100% focused on ESOP exits. And they've been able to raise even more money than they had planned, I believe. So APIS and Heritage, Todd Leverett and his partner are national leaders in getting capital to get larger businesses converting to ESOPs. There are some other capital sources. And then there's on the co-op side, there is some capital out there. There's the LEAF Fund, there's the National Cooperative Bank. We were able to tap some of those funding sources so the co-ops that I was involved with in the state were the Electric Violin Shop back in 2016, and then we just closed So True Seed in Asheville at the end of last year. And in the first case with Electric Violin Shop, we brought in some outside capital. So True Seed was 100% seller financed. And a lot of these deals are a combination. They might have some outside financing and some seller financing. That's pretty common. Mark said an option is to
the beginning of the conversation around the idea, and I'd like to hear this, especially for earlier stage businesses, employees being able to use wage contribution. I know Mark was talking about maybe using some of their bonuses to do that, to slowly, what does that look like?
Yeah, so in the case of a worker co-op, you do have to buy a share. So when the co-op is being set up, the future worker owners will determine the share price. I've seen anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, $5,000 for that one share, but that can be deducted over time from your paycheck until you're a full owner. So that's a worker co-op. I think Mark is talking about things like management buyout. People, there's all different. So I didn't talk about stock options, but that's another way to bring about an employee-owned business. Incentive stock options or synthetic equity, like stock appreciation rights, restricted stock purchases. There was a business, Namaste Solar in Colorado, kind of did what you're saying, Mark, about having people use their bonuses to buy restricted stock. So they were employee-owned through restricted stock, but ultimately they converted to a worker co-op because that was a better match for that particular business. So in the ownership world, we think about ESOPs and co-ops and EOTs, but there are many businesses that are employee-owned through various forms of equity purchase. So that's another way to do it.
I love it. So practically, what are some of the questions that a business should be interested in this to lead them down this kind of decision tree? Because as you're talking, and it can feel a bit overwhelming when you're thinking about the different ways that you can structure, right? Buys, exit timeline, some of the things, and employees engaged and voting. So what are some of the major decisions on this decision tree that, at least in terms of how to structure?
Yeah, so number one is the size of the business. So I would look at top line sales, I would look at profitability, EBITDA, and then I would look at number of employees. So those would be the first questions I would ask. And if you're 10 million and up and you've got 20 employees, you can definitely look into an ESOP. And there's a wonderful network of ESOP service providers that can help. And the North Carolina Employee Ownership Center has relationships with many of them in our state and can point you in the right direction. The other thing about an ESOP, well, the other question is, how engaged do employees want to be? So some employees are very excited about being very engaged in governing the business. Would love to be an ESOP or co-op. You could run an ESOP with minimal employee engagement. You're probably going to have some kind of ESOP communication committee. You'll certainly supercharge your ESOP if you get people engaged and get people involved and do open book. But you don't have to, is what I'm trying to say. So if you've got employees that just want to come to work and you're a bigger business, an ESOP is probably a great, fantastic option for you. If you're, smaller in sales, smaller in profitability, but you want to be profitable, we can't really take distressed companies and just turn them over to the employees and expect miracles. So you really want to have a good, solid operation. Again, no mission without margin, right? So we want to have a strong operating business. But if it's smaller and people are super keen to be engaged, 2 worker co-ops that I was engaged with, the owner had already kind of stepped out of day-to-day operations and the employees were running it. So they were well suited to become worker cooperatives. And in a business that's not like that, you just want to think ahead. Who's going to run this business and what training do they need to be ready to really run it? How am I going to develop people, or do I need to bring in somebody to lead the business? And then just talk to the employees about what they want, because sometimes employees really would love to be part of an ESOP and or a worker co-op and would love to be part of this business long term. If you don't tell them what you're thinking, they might go ahead and get up somewhere else. It might actually be a reason that they'd want to stay. So think about the size of the business, revenues, employees, what you want, what they want. Those are some of the things to just think about.
I love that. That's great. So now, for people that are engaging in this world, where do they start as far as resources go? And again, it can feel like a bit of a big world. So what does that look like? Any other last you'd want to give?
Well, of course, I am going to promote the North Carolina Employee Ownership Center. We spent a lot of time building our website. So there's basic information that you can just go to nceoc.org.
I'll drop the website in the chat. Okay, I'll do that right now.
Thank you. And just read about worker co-ops, employee ownership trusts, ESOPs, and get a sense of what are some of the things to think about and what are some of the success stories. And then we have a ton of stories about North Carolina businesses that became ESOPs or worker co-ops or employee ownership trusts. And we've been building our library of videos. So we've done a video interview with of the former owner of the electric shop, as well as the former owner of Shopwells. And there's some other videos, Salem Distributing, there's a video. So yeah, go watch the videos and just get a sense of what people are thinking. And then we're doing, I should shout out our event. It's going to be October. Yes. So October is Employee Ownership Month. I believe it's October 19th. Yeah, Wednesday the 19th. It's going to be in Winston-Salem at a place called Canteen Still Life from 4 to 6 p.m. And we're going to showcase 4 businesses that became employee owned in 2021. So it's ShopBot, So True Seed, Cactus Group, and I believe Contech. Yeah. And they are all, 3 out of 4 of those are located here in Durham. So we've had
come on, Durham. I love
a lot of good. Yes. And the city of Durham actually worked with us to start the center and funded us to work with some legacy Black-owned businesses here in the city.
So I want to, as our closing piece, because I'm here at Provident, Black-centric co-working, leaning into Black business and equity. So what are the opportunities to use some of these models and tools? And I know this is specifically in advancing equity and wealth, like the Black community. Like, what does that look like? And I know
Yes.
some of these Black legacy businesses you can, what's the real landscape out there right now for this type of work?
Yes. So, Democracy at Work Institute is doing a lot of great work to advance equity. And the North Carolina Employee Ownership Center, we've got a partnership with the Greater Durham Black Chamber. We're just trying to let folks know that these tools are out there and that you could consider a worker cooperative, getting people to just think about succession planning so you don't just shut your business down if there's a health crisis. Um, and then just the power of cooperatives to make us stronger together. I think we can learn from that Latinx community up in Asheville, put our Emma. You know, if there's a need, we can put our resources together and build something. We've been thinking about, can we bring some sole proprietors together to form cooperatives? Actually, one, I don't think they're ready to announce yet, Perry, and they had a janitorial business for many years, and they worked with some other associated contractors to do landscaping and to do business repair, you know, architectural repair and things like that. And they are bringing everyone together, and that is a Black-owned business. They're going to be a large cooperative, at least I think 20 people. So those are some of the models that we're helping to build. And so those are folks that normally would not own a business, would not have equity in a business, would not have the ability to build wealth. So that's where equity can really come in here. Is
and are they
bringing us together.
Practically, are they forming a larger entity, subcontractors, and they're all owners of this entity, but they're still running their kind of
They're going to own a business together. They're going to bring all of their know-how and contacts and assets together to run this new business. And they were also talking about maybe running some retirement communities, starting some smaller retirement communities that are affordable for the Black community.
Oh, wow. Such brilliant opportunities. And I do think it starts with, I love how you said that, you know, it's better when we're going together. There's the African proverb, that's but together we go far. And I do think that there is this leaning into together, started moving us in that direction in a lot of ways, where people started collaborating a bit more, overcoming that cultural barrier here in individualistic America. What's that barrier been like as you're exploring some of these other barriers maybe have you faced that you need to kind of overcome to start moving in this? I think that, you know, we all thrive when we're doing this together. I don't see that there are, and again, the pandemic reminded us of that. You have this virus that is out there, like, no, we kind of on a lot of things because we're all in this together. What are some of the barriers that you have to overcome to this other side that I think is beautiful?
Well, you know, there are systemic barriers to accessing capital for the Black community. That's a long time thing. We're starting to see funds like APIS and Heritage. We're starting to see, you know, a lot of movement in that area to fund Black entrepreneurship, which is fantastic. There has been, and there still is, barriers to accessing capital. So that's going to be a barrier. And then there's just barriers within our own minds, you know, that hold us back. So the more we can just there and have a big vision of what's possible, to me is that we're going to transform this economy from one that's based on exploitation to one that's based on cooperation. That's a big picture of where we're going.
Yes.
And right now we're seeing a massive backlash of people wanting the way it was, which very few, and we don't want that anymore. We are going to, you know, a world that benefits everybody through cooperation. So getting our minds right, I think, is a part of but we're getting there.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your heart. This has been a really informative and beautiful session. Thanks to everybody who decided to spend the time. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here with us. Anne Claire, how do
people reach me?
Yes.
Well, I'm happy to put my email in the chat. So it's Anne Claire at Broughton-Consulting.com. And my website is Broughton-Consulting.com, or you can reach me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with folks. The North Carolina Employee Ownership Center's in the chat. And I will be hanging out in Providence, 1898. Thank you, Destin. So I'm happy to meet people there as well.
Come on. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Anne Claire. Look forward to seeing you when you come back into the co-working community. And again, thanks to everybody for tuning in. World, y'all. See you